If I had to put a number on it in terms of how much faster I'm going as a result of Claude Code, this is my number, okay? 700% faster. EJJ, nice to meet you. Thanks for supporting the show.
Thank you for having me on.
I have an opinion that a lot of people disagree with, which is that I think we're going to get superintelligence, and I don't think it's going to matter for like decades.
Okay, but how would that work?
There's this common argument that there are no adults in the room, and I would like broaden that to no institutions.
See, that this is fashion. This is fashion, okay?
Well-being, our environment, and even our very survival.
There you go. What more do you want?
Doom Debates live, Wednesday, March 25th. Anybody in here? So a bunch of people are saying hello, and somebody's saying everything looks and sounds fine. All right, great. So I'm definitely going to be taking some live calls. So in the meantime, I see some questions trickling in. I'm just going to dive into your questions. If nobody asks a question, if I just have time to improv, then I guess I'll just talk about random things on my mind. Claude Code. Ask me about Claude Code. I'm using Claude Code a lot. It's quite impressive. Quite a game changer. Let's get to the first question. All right, first question is from Roy. He says, is AI now being trained on its own inference data, and will doing that over and over result in superintelligence? You know, that's always been a question since 2023. Even since GPT-3 came out, there's always been the question of like, can't we just feed this in on itself? Like whenever I notice a problem in GPT-3 or GPT-4, whenever I notice something it can't do, it always feels like maybe there's a quick patch. Especially today. It's just the AI feels so robust today. You know, like I find myself, I use Claude Code a lot today, and I'm often like finding little tweaks. I'm like, oh, Claude Code, can you actually do this instead? Like, let me give you a little bit of feedback. But every time I give it a little bit of feedback, I'm like, couldn't I just have given it a few more instructions in my configuration doc and it would have already known to do that? It just feels closer and closer like it's patching all the gaps. So Roy's question of like, can we train it on its own data? That's like a special case of that, right? Is like, can it kind of close the gap and just go all the way to self-improvement, right? It's this idea of closing the gap, getting the human out of the loop. And my intuition says yes, like it definitely feels like the gap is closing. Like it's just able to take leaps across bigger and bigger gaps and self-improve. Like that's what I feel like is happening. Maybe the strongest argument against that is what Stephen Burns was saying on the episode. Stephen Burns was saying, well, it's going to be a different algorithm. The AI is going to, the next generation AI is going to fundamentally have like a better reinforcement learning type of model. It's not going to just be like imitating words. So until we cross that gap, the learning is not going to be that great. That's like the strongest counter argument. But I feel like we just have this regime that like, sure, it's weaker, but I still feel like the current regime can just somehow close the gap. I just feel like it can do a lot of like lower quality, slower thinking, but still do enough of it and just still use that to like reason to how to build the next AI. Like I just feel like it's hard for me to imagine that there's these like fundamental leaps. And when I talk to Stephen Burns, he's like, well, the fundamental leap is like you work on something for a week and you build up some insights. But like, I don't know, man, I'm not seeing it. And if you listen to me spar with Steve, I think he's kind of right, but he didn't convince me that he's right to a degree that like, I can imagine like 2 weeks down the line, some research paper comes out and it's like, oh, well, this isn't what Steve was promising, but it's going to make the gaps like way smaller. That's what my intuition currently says. Is I think we're perched on this precipice of like, really anything could happen. Anything could happen in the next few weeks and months. All right, I'm checking the questions feed. Yeah, producer Ori's saying, are we in the takeoff? I mean, we're obviously yes, right? I mean, Claude Code and Dean Ball called it, respect to him, like a couple months ago, he was like, Opus 4.5 is AGI. I mean, it's a good observation to be like, look, this is very much like takeoff life. And let me tell you this about using Claude Code every day for my day job, like to accelerate my coding at my day job. You might be wondering, how much faster are you, Liron? Are you 20% faster, 50% faster, 70% faster? If I had to put a number on it in terms of how much faster I'm going at my day job as a result of Claude Code, this is my number, okay? 700% faster. There's like 7 of me at my company right now, thanks to Claude Code. It's like an insane amount. Nice. Oh. All right, we got the first donation here. EJJ 2025, returning champion, returning donor. Appreciate that, EJJ. So you're saying, can I join the live with no video since I donated? Yes, yeah, you get a special exemption. Money and video is interchangeable over here at Doom Debates. So just come on into the stream and I'll invite you in whenever. Yeah, that's right, producer Rory. 7x improvement. It's like I don't think the world is caught up to how insane this is on a daily basis. It's totally insane. And it's stark for me because I've been a programmer since I was 9 years old. So multiple decades now, having been a computer programmer. And I come back to my desk where I normally do computer programming. And instead of like querying the database, I ask the AI to query the database. And instead of clicking a bunch of stuff on Google Cloud to like configure stuff, I just talk to the AI and have it configure stuff. And this is just like a daily basis. And not only that, but I have like 5 different conversations open and I'm talking to it about all this different stuff. And it's literally just all going 7 times faster. And this is just like the last few weeks of my life when I first really got into this. And, you know, I even tweeted, I'm like, I actually think that there's like a 2% chance that this has all been like a big dream. Probably not, right? 98% chance that it's not. But I just think that the level of surrealness that the job that I've been used to for decades is now so fundamentally different and crazy. I just haven't fully come to terms with the day-to-day surrealness of it. So I think there's a 2% chance that I'm currently in this dream that subjectively made it feel like a few months have gone by, but really it's just one night. And then I'm going to wake up in like 10 objective minutes and I'm going to be like, oh, that was a crazy dream. But really AI is still pretty far away. So yeah, my P dream is 2%, maybe 1%. 2% is a little bit high because the dream's been going on so long now. And even the fact that it might be a dream has now been going, I already had that thought like a week ago. So my P of dream is now down to, let's say 1%. Yeah, I'll ask. That's something I should be asking every guest is what's your P dream? What's your P simulation, P doom, P dream? These are critical questions that people need to know. Brian6464 saying, I think there's a lot of confusion generated by the way you describe what AI is going to do. The implication is always that AI has a purpose, its own agency. You don't mean that though. I feel like most people in the stream probably know what I'm going to say here. This is like a pretty standard argument that has its own agency. It's just like saying, look, does a self-driving car have its own agency? At some point, a destination gets inputted into its memory. Did it put it there? Did the driver put it there? Did the user put it there? Did Waymo, the company, put it there? It doesn't matter. It has a destination. It's currently routing to the destination. And when you perturb the route, what's it going to do? Reroute to the destination. So you've just got this entity, which is just steadfastly always moving obstacles out of its way to get to the destination. So whatever you want to call that, you don't have to call it agency. You don't have to call it will. But if you get in its way, you better watch out. Okay, so it's like maybe it's a purely terminological distinction. All right, Bobby Monsoon 215 is saying, been watching your channel grow since day one. Much respect. What do you think about OpenAI stepping away from SORA 2? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's fine. Like the reasoning is obvious, right? It's just like Claude Code is kind of going ahead of them. Anthropic is catching up to them. I think it's like 70% caught up to OpenAI, which is pretty insane. And they're like, oh crap, we got to focus down. We got to make our own. We got to focus on our own code. Like SORA is too much of a distraction. It hasn't caught on that well. I think it makes perfect sense that SORA is not going to be in their top 3 priorities when they have so much going on and they have to prioritize. I do think it's funny though that if you rewind 2 months ago, everybody's like, oh my God, SORA 2, it's going to like overtake Facebook, right? Like the SORA app, this is like a new type of social network. And now we're like 2 months later and like the SORA app is being shut down. It's just funny how it goes from like, 100 to 0 so fast. But am I surprised? No, I mean, we see it with new kind of social network type products all the time, right? It's totally ordinary. It's totally fine, totally understandable. It would need an explanation why they would keep investing in it when they have so many other priorities. Okay, and I guess you got to give Anthropic credit. I mean, they clearly have made a very powerful strategic decision because they have their main competitor now on the back foot trying to be like, oh, you know what? Their strategy was a little bit better. We need to kind of merge their strategy into our strategy. So props to Anthropic. I mean, arguably Anthropic, in many ways, Anthropic, you could say it's just like the number one highest potential company right now. They seem to have the most capable team, the most mission-aligned team. And it's very interesting because I would have said OpenAI is number one a few months ago, and they're still technically number one by revenue. But in terms of like coherent strategy, execution, momentum, I feel like Anthropic is kind of, it's what do you say? You have the mandate of heaven. I think I can say Anthropic would have the mandate of heaven right now. And, I feel like Google had it a couple months ago with Gemini 3, but now Google's kind of given it up. I mean, it's crazy stuff, but Holly Elmore, my voice of conscience here, would be hating that I'm playing like fanboy or sportscaster among the AI companies, right? Because I'm of two minds. On one mind, I'm a techno-optimist. I love tech. I love startups. I'm always listening to tech podcasts. And I do like scoring the race and being the fanboy and being the cheerleader in the stands, right? It's fun for me. But on the other hand, it's like the competition to hell, right? So I'm of two minds and I'm happy to switch back and forth to code talk to whoever I'm talking to. All right, let's let in EJJ. EJJ, nice to meet you. Thanks for supporting the show.
Thank you for having me on. So yeah, I just wanted to, this is a debate channel. I just wanted to, give an argument. So in respect to the instrumental convergence argument, in my opinion, a lot of times it's like a lot of AI risk arguments are made like in too broad sense. They're not too specific. Like especially with the instrumental convergence argument, you see that it's sort of the conditional that, what's the probability if the sub goal is achieved that you'll be able to then achieve the main goal. Yeah. So like in the real world, when you do sort of planning, there's sort of constraints, especially on efficiency. So how expensive is the plan versus another plan towards some other sub goal, and then also uncertainty. There might be uncertainty with achieving a hard sub goal, and then also there are sort of different sort of these power seeking sub goals do compete with each other. So you have to sort of account for Pareto. So in my opinion, especially with the instrumental convergence argument, it seems like sort of in most cases, you would not see super extreme behavior. You would see sort of, with the right initialization, you could see extreme behavior, but on average, it's not, I wouldn't say it manifests in a dangerous capacity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm not sure I understood the crux of your argument. Are you basically saying AI keeps having to think about like feasibility and trade-offs, and so it can't go too crazy? Or what did I miss?
Yeah, I mean, you make a lot of the argument with the goal engine, right? And then the idea is essentially that you have to sort of do a plan how to get to a goal, right? And the idea is that a lot of you have to not only account for is how do you reach that goal, but also what are the different ways you can reach the goal. And also how, so reachability is one thing, and it can be the case that a lot of these power-seeking ones, are really inefficient. Like an example is like, if you tell your robot to get you a Starbucks, you could either cross the road, get a Starbucks, or it could take over the world, ban all cars, and then get a Starbucks, and it will not get run over. So it, it survives or whatever. So there's like it makes a trade-off. For like efficiency and uncertainty. Like it's uncertain that it will become king of the world to ban the cars, and it takes forever to do so. So why not just compensate and buy like a construction worker vest so the cars see where the robot is going. You know what I mean?
So maybe this isn't your argument, but is it basically the idea of like why would it go crazy when it has like a simpler, straightforward path to get to its goal?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And we did talk a little bit about this last session. And I even mentioned this in the context of like, I'm actually updating that I think that we're in a regime right now where we do have AIs that are calmly achieving goals, right? I mean, I mentioned Claude Code. Like when you tell Claude Code, hey, go do this on my website, it's not like, oh, you want me to do this on your website? Okay, I got to go make all the money in the world, right? So is this what you're referring to, where we're seeing current AIs already achieve goals calmly?
I think it manifests like even for like more capable systems that just there will, in the real world, it's unlikely to be the case that you'll get this sort of super duper power seeking behavior because there's just a cheaper, still, somewhat reachable path to your goal that, it's better on your, on all your fronts to pursue that rather than just sort of go completely off the rails and cause existential harm.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm agreeing with you, which is it's an update that I had to make when I saw Claude Code. I'm like, okay, well, we've definitely proven, right? We've proven that we can achieve quite a lot of goals without sparking the major instrumental convergence. I should also add, though, as a caveat, even with Claude Code, you often see it like go a little bit too far, and then it's like, wait, why did you delete this? I was like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize you didn't want me to go that far. So there's like a little bit of overreach, but I'm happy to concede that like with Claude Code and with current tools, we did better than what I was afraid of, right? We have agent AIs that are useful. Yeah, so I'm willing to concede on that. And so you might be asking, well, long term, why am I afraid that the next generation of AIs is going to go out of control? So there's two dynamics. The first dynamic is, I think, the next generation. Like, I do think Stephen Burns is right. A lot of people are right that there's probably a next generation coming where they aren't just pre-trained on token prediction. There's like a fundamentally different type of training phase. Like, it's still going to follow the bitter lesson. It's still going to work by injecting a ton of data and using a ton of compute to pre-train, but it's not going to be like a next word pre-training. It's going to be like some other pre-training that has like a reinforcement learning signal. This is what I talked about with Stephen Burns a few weeks ago on the show. Highly recommended. And I do think that that architecture is going to have more of the character of an AlphaGo or the character of like an old traditional AI where it loves to cheat, right? It loves to just find shortcuts and do whatever it takes to run up the score. I think we're going to see that more fundamentally embedded in the DNA of an AI. And I think that's going to go hand in hand with the AI that's actually more powerful. Like you're going to have this AI that's like, oh man, it just did a bunch of stuff. I can't really tell all the action per minute that it just did. It did a ton of actions, but it's succeeding. You know, like without all these books written about Elon Musk, for instance, if I didn't have like some people reporting like, oh yeah, he kind of manages his companies like this. If I didn't know, imagine you just saw all of Elon Musk's companies without reading the books on them. You'd be like, what the hell? How is SpaceX landing rockets and doing Starship and, you know, and getting us to the space station and like no other, and it has like as many rocket launches, more rocket launches than all the other companies combined, but it's run by the same CEO who's also running Tesla. Like what the hell's going on? But at least we have some introspection, you know, we have some mechanistic interpretability on what Elon's doing and what his limitations are. But imagine that times 10 or 100. So to your question, right? I just imagine that the AI just becomes a lot more powerful and it's just going to like be hitting these outcomes and we can't really tell why. And there's a logical implication between hitting all these crazy outcomes and the instrumental convergence aspect. They're like, oh, okay, it ended up using a lot of resources on the way. Oh, go figure, right? And I expect like a higher level of resource usage, a higher level of aggressiveness. What do you think so far?
Yeah, I think it's true that a lot of these constraints, like efficiency constraints and being able to like achievability constraints and so forth, they definitely become less severe as the AI becomes more capable. But I think that's I think it's my argument is more so that there is sort of in practice, it's not trivial that you give the AI an arbitrary goal. And if it's capable enough, it's just gonna, take over the world. Recursive self-improve to become like a godlike entity. So it's more so of a general case argument that it's, by default it doesn't do it. With the right goal, the right, environment, it can definitely go crazy.
Yeah. So I think I agree with you that it's very possible to just have an AI that just does useful things and then stops, right? Like that is theoretically possible. The main reason why I expect the AIs to go crazy is because I think that it's kind of a one-way door, or it's a slippery slope, or it's an attractor state, where the moment you have an AI that's going a little bit crazy, like the moment the AI is like, oh, hey, instead of always stopping after 10 minutes, I'm going to just try running a little bit longer. All right. So the moment you start unleashing it, then it keeps getting a taste. It's like, oh, well, let me then spawn a sub-agent that does this even more. Or like, it gets more tempting. And not only that, but like the other argument is like, okay, imagine we're in a world where we have all of these leashed AIs. Everybody's got a leashed AI that has 10 minutes of compute time and then it has to stop or whatever, right? And then you don't get any more credits for a month. So even if we live in that world, I'm just observing that it just takes one incident, right, of one AI going off the leash, and then suddenly there's no limit to how far the positive feedback loop can run. Right? So it's like, oh, nice. I have 100 minutes to run now. Great. Let me go and bet a bunch of copies of myself, sleeper cells of myself, right? To do the next 1,000 minutes, 10,000 minutes, right? And there's never going to be a damper. There's never going to be the negative feedback loop that stops the positive feedback loop. I often bring it to the analogy of like, look, nukes can explode really big. They're a huge positive feedback loop, but then what's the negative feedback loop? The fuel runs out. Right? So the neutrons stop hitting the next piece of radioactive uranium. They stop hitting the next piece because there's just no more uranium atoms left in the core. So nuclear bombs, as crazy as they are, they do run into the negative feedback regime after the huge positive feedback regime. But with AI, where's the negative feedback regime? It's literally the edges of the visible universe, right? It's the light cone. That's the only negative feedback. It's the next alien civilization. So even though you may be correct, right? We can run an AI that doesn't explode. It's just that there's one damper that we take off of one instance of an AI, and then it's game over.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you that, if you do have a super powerful AI and everyone has access to it, it's going to go off the rails, like one person does a bad thing. But I think in reality, I think there are two things that practically constrain like this positive feedback loop. And one is definitely sort of limiting sort of the priors that the AI is available. So if you limit its experience and limit its ability to explore, to get the experience that it doesn't have to solve problems, achieve arbitrary goals. And also in reality, and this is part, I think, with your point that, it's sort of will find some way to achieve a goal, even if you didn't decide that it does it that way. What you see is that when you're sort of doing this recursive self-improvement or automated AI research, you see sort of, Goodhart's law emerge, where it sort of overfits to the objective, to the proxy or whatever. And then it's, there the negative feedback comes that it sort of overfits to whatever objective you give it. And then also, in reality, I think you can constrain it by just limiting its experience and exploration capabilities.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Do you feel like we've discussed this adequately? You want to ask one final question?
I think that's about it. Yeah, that's good. Thank you for your time.
Nice. All right. Yeah, EJJ, thanks so much. Come back next time. Appreciate you. All right. Anybody else want to call in? There's a call-in link in the YouTube. I'm going to post it one more time. Somebody saying thoughts on S-risk. I've never had that many thoughts on S-risk. Like, I definitely think that it's possible, suffering risks. I definitely think that it's possible that AI might torture us forever. I think it's a very significant risk. It's just not my mainline scenario that it tortures us forever. My mainline scenario is just that it like goes after something weird that doesn't cause us infinite pain forever. But, and it's also an interesting question, like, will the AI have empathy, right? Because it does feel like positive and negative valence of consciousness. It feels like aliens can agree on what that is, right? It feels like that's some fundamental property, or it's almost, but is color a fundamental property? Like, color is an example of a property that doesn't seem fundamental to me, but is the qualia of color fundamental? I don't know. I guess not. But is the qualia of pain versus pleasure fundamental? It sure feels that way, but I honestly don't know. Like, you can imagine aliens just don't have the qualia of pain versus pleasure. I don't know, but I suspect they do. Like, where I'm going with this is like, if you can objectively define the qualia of pain versus pleasure, you can imagine that even an AI is like, look, let's not cause infinite suffering, right? Like, let's put a limit on how much suffering we cause. I can imagine that it's like the closest thing you get to objective morality is just an awareness of conscious suffering. And maybe if the AI feels that, then maybe it'll want to reduce it in others, because maybe the AI will be like, you know what, maybe I should just care about the total amount of conscious suffering. But don't get me wrong, right? Because I'm always on the other side of the debate on this. I'm always telling my guests, why would it think that when it can just like score more points by not thinking that? I definitely think that that's a powerful argument. It's just, I guess what I'm saying is this a simple target in goal space? If it's a simple target, that makes it one of the few targets that has a chance of being the target, right? If there's only a few possible targets, and one of the targets is notice that qualia is like this big cluster, in the ontology of the universe, notice that qualia of pleasure and pain is like a salient part of the universe, right? You can't miss it. Well, if you can't miss it, then that increases the chance that your utility function will be to maximize pleasure. It also increases the chance that your utility function will be to maximize pain, right? But at least it decreases the chance that you'll accidentally cause a bunch of pleasure and pain. So whichever one you end up doing, you'll probably be aware and think about, what it means to you that you're doing it. Slightly off topic, but as a rationalist, what do you think about futarchy? Ah, yes, futarchy. So Robin Hanson invented this idea of futarchy when he invented prediction markets. He's basically saying, we're all betting on what's about to happen in the future. What if we just had markets where they bet conditionally on different policies? Like, if this policy is chosen, what's going to happen in the future? Or if this policy is chosen conditionally, what's most likely to happen in the future? So you imagine all these prediction markets that are conditional bets, meaning if, so for example, like, let's say you want the policy to be to like do a peace treaty or surrender some war, right? So what you do is you have two markets. One of them is like peace treaty and economic growth. And the other market is no peace treaty and economic growth, something like that. And then you compare what the probability of economic growth is as given by both of those markets. And that will tell you, okay, the bettors think that the policy of ending the war. All right, we got a donation. Thanks for that. I'll get back to you in a sec. So the bettors think that ending the war in that case would drive economic growth because they're betting that the conditional probability on ending the war is higher. And so if the politicians are listening to the bettors, that would be the governance system known as futarchy, right? So futarchy is like, you just look at the prediction markets, you see which one is predicting that you're going to get more of what you want, and you reason from there to infer the policy that you therefore have to take. Like in this case, okay, you have to end the war because it'll create economic prosperity, and you committed at the beginning of your term that you want economic prosperity. I think there's a lot of wisdom to it. I don't think it can work exactly as described, right? I think there has to be some kind of nuance to it. I haven't given it that much thought, but compared to many other forms of government, I think it's pretty good. Let's see. And by the way, if you like these kind of discussions, go check out my episode with Audrey Tong from a couple months ago. Audrey Tong, the cyber ambassador of Taiwan. That was an interesting episode because Audrey Tong has kind of picked up the mantle of Robin Hansen and Vitalik Buterin, and she's kind of implementing those policies. All right, I'm reading your questions here. I'm going to skip over to the people who are donating money to the show. All right, so it's very important that I read out Gadzooks' comment here because he donated $13.99 Canadian. Gadzooks is saying, all AI made of wax, magnet emoji. All right, so you've got your message out here to the viewers, Gadzooks. All right, and the next paid comment here is from David Patton 1. He says, who are the thinkers with a low PDoom whose arguments you have integrated into your PDoom, either lowering your certainty or your PDoom? Yeah, great question. I mean, the last episode I published on the channel yesterday was from 2023 when I talked to Quentin Pope. He's a smart fellow. Give me a sec. Yeah, Quentin Pope, he's a smart fellow, and he was saying, AI, it's all just interpolating data. It's never going to figure out how to map goals to actions in this superhuman way. You don't have to worry. Like, my PDoom is 4%. And at the end of the conversation, I'm like, okay, well, I updated a tiny bit. I mean, you're obviously a smart person and you know my arguments. It's not like I'm telling you my arguments for the first time. You've read Eliezer Yudkowsky and you're really convinced that AI is going to work fundamentally differently. So I'll give you a tiny update, right? That's all I could offer. But I don't really feel it. I think that he is just not paying attention to something that seems incredibly salient to me. So I don't really feel the update strongly. One of the biggest updates I have is what I mentioned a few minutes ago, which is like I'm using Claude Code, right? And it's the same experience I had using the chatbots, right? So there is, I do admit that empirically speaking, it's like every day that we don't all get killed is technically a little bit of evidence against my case, right? It's not strong evidence, right? Think about the turkey, right? Okay, the turkey hasn't gotten slaughtered for Thanksgiving, but it's not Thanksgiving yet, right? So I don't think it's a lot of evidence. I really don't. But there is like a pattern where it's like, hey, we had really useful chatbots that are passing the Turing test and we didn't get killed. And now we have Claude Code and it's doing agentic work, right? It's writing software, it's delivering large milestones and it's not going off and killing everybody. Right. So I have to pay attention to this and I have to say, okay, how do I refine my mental model? Because I would have told you that, hey, when we have this amount of capable agency and goal achievement, that will run wild, right? So how have we not quite run wild yet? And the last answer I give is, look, I do have one ace card to play here, which is the confident prediction of runaway AI has always been premised on reaching the threshold that it's superhuman at achieving end-to-end outcomes. So as powerful as Claude Code is, people are saying, oh my God, I went to sleep and Claude Code made me a whole website. It still doesn't work to be like, let me go to sleep for a week, right? And make me an entire company and making money. And some people are like, well, I did that. It made me $100,000 because it sold an ebook for me. So we're getting there. Don't get me wrong. But there are still many humans alive today, including myself. Like, I think I could go head to head against Claude starting a new business from scratch. Right? Because Claude and other AIs, they're not quite there, right? So until I'm only ready to concede the doom prediction when we have a Claude that's just head to head. You know, it can build a company better than I can build a company, or it can make a software product with many thousands of lines over many days better than I can. At that point, I'm like, wow, it's doing that and it's still not killing everybody. Okay, then my update is going to be larger for sure. But right now, if you ask why isn't Claude going crazy, I actually think the answer to why Claude isn't going crazy, it's more on the side of it can't. More on the side of it can't than on the side of it won't. You know, can't versus won't. I think Claude isn't ready with the capability to go crazy yet. I think that's key. So, but I wanted to answer David Patton's question of like, you know, what updates have I made? What low PDoom argument do I find the most convincing? You know, just using Claude Code. And when you look at the people at Anthropic and OpenAI, the ones who don't have a high PDoom, which is some of them, they say, look, this is useful. This is so good that we're building this. We're optimistic. So it does kind of give them a few base points, right? They launch a product. It does more useful work. The world doesn't end yet, right? So they get to pick up Bayesian pennies. I don't think they get to pick up Bayesian dollars. I don't think they're picking up Bayesian Benjamins, right? But every day they get like a penny worth of Bayesian evidence toward their side. But the ultimate test will still be, you know, that threshold I described. But yeah, let me just, for completeness here, right? The question is, what other low PDoomers have been convincing me? Recent low PDoomers, I mean, it's kind of slim pickings, you know, like everybody seems to be like ignoring the question, right? I mean, Dario's been a low PDoomer, but he just published an essay and he didn't really argue for low PDoom. He just kind of didn't engage with the doom argument. He dismissed it. He's like, the AI doesn't just want a singular goal. right? That was kind of his main argument. Like, oh, you know, the whole singular goal thing. Like Dario has never like embraced this idea of like, it'll get a singular goal in its mind and it'll move heaven and earth to achieve the singular goal. So I'm trying to think, maybe if some people have heard, if anybody's heard me mention anything, feel free to jog my memory. But like, I'm just not hearing that many low P doom arguments. I mean, when I actually just think to myself of like, why won't we be doomed? Which my intuition still kind of says maybe we won't be. I'm just thinking to myself, maybe it'll somehow go slow enough, right? Maybe the Stephen Burns milestone of the next generation of AI, maybe that'll come in 30 whole years. And maybe the friendly AIs that are more like LLMs and aren't going too crazy on us, they're still going slow enough, they're still controllable enough. Maybe those buddies will help us prepare for the next revolution, right? That's like the best case scenario. I don't think that's the mainline scenario. I don't think that's likely, but that's kind of what my intuition says, right? My intuition says that like, hey, you're going to use Claude Code basically the same way I'm using Claude Code to like restructure, like I just migrated a database on my website, like the same way I'm using Claude Code to do all these operations, I'm going to use Claude Code to speed run AI alignment. I don't think that's really going to happen, but I think that's what the AI companies think. And I guess that's like our best hope. Let's see, David Patton saying, what about Ken Stanley? I personally found Ken Stanley completely unconvincing. Like, I didn't think anything that he said on the episode was like my personal opinion. I'm obviously biased, but like, I highly recommend watching the Ken Stanley debate from a year ago on the channel. Ken Stanley was a former team lead at OpenAI, and he's written a couple books. I mean, he is highly regarded in the machine learning community. He was on Machine Learning Street Talk. Those guys are fans of his. I just thought that from my perspective, I just had stronger arguments that he didn't have any good objections to, but of course I'm biased, right? So what does it mean that I'm saying it? Not that much. Yeah, whistling past the digital graveyard. Exactly. Let's see if I can broadcast that comment. Show on stream. Ta-da. Okay. All right. Let's see. Somebody wants to come on live.
Hello. Yeah, so Ori Nagel, who's in the chat, said that I should join in here.
Cool.
But I'm not very familiar with your position. I mean, obviously, well, Doom debates, I think you're leaning more towards the doomer side, but what would you think is like the biggest source of uncertainty, let's say, in like how you're thinking about the future?
Okay, very perceptive that I'm leaning toward the doomer side. And what was the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, where do you have the biggest?
Sorry, Scottish, carry on.
No worries. What's like the biggest source of uncertainty here around like how you think AI is going to impact the future?
The biggest source of uncertainty, I mean, maybe the order in which things will play out, right? Because I feel like I know the destination. I know some properties of the destination. I think some properties is there will be an insane amount of power that will act with, ferocity and speed, like the AI, the same way that humans act with ferocity and speed relative to plants, relative to evolution, right? It's just going to be like insane caliber, right? Insane order of magnitude coming soon. I feel like I can predict that confidently. But I think producer Ori might want to hop on and join this discussion as well. Let me make sure he's got a link here.
I see. So in the like Yudkowsky line of, like a fast takeoff, as opposed to like a Hansonian, like the economy takes off or something, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, Yudkowsky predicted that, FOOM, where AI would keep improving itself. I'm not necessarily predicting, I think FOOM is likely, but I think even more likely than FOOM is just the even more robust prediction that eventually, right, even if it takes 10 whole years to get up to this point, it'll get to a point where it's incredibly powerful and fast and transforms the world at a completely unprecedented rate.
So I have an opinion that a lot of people disagree with, which is that I agree on the timelines for capabilities. I think we're going to get superintelligence, and I don't think it's going to matter for like decades.
Okay, but how would that work?
There's like historical precedent for this in terms of just the adoption of any kind of technology in an economy. We can look at electricity being rolled out over the span of decades, despite being obviously this very transformative thing, because it's very capital intensive, right? Or even, a closer analogy is the IT productivity paradox of the 70s and 80s, right? There's this economist, Robert Solow, he says, we see computers everywhere except in the productivity statistics. You have this massive investment in, computerization. Everyone thought that all the office jobs were going to go away. What ends up happening is that office jobs explode, right? You've, made the cost of bureaucracy cheaper, and so you're going to consume more of it. but nonetheless, like it's buffered by this sort of institutional adoption. And I don't think that.
Sorry, keep going.
Like when we think about AI risk, we're thinking in terms of this sort of Hobbesian state of all against all, right? Where like this is like a sovereign agent that we have to like contend with, when in reality, if we're thinking about these systems as economic agents, they're going to be deeply embedded in structures of capital allocation, which means finance, regulations, in ways that I think like make it sort of negative EV to challenge, right? Like if your trading partners, if you're a corporation that's run autonomously and your trading partners, you want them to like uphold their contracts, you're not going to overthrow the government because that means you have to enforce those yourself. Like it's not economical.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump in. Hey everyone, hey Liron, hey Lee.
Hey Ori.
I ran into Lee at a party in San Francisco, and he was like, "What do you do?" And I said, "Hey, I'm a producer for Doom Debates." I think I may have been wearing the shirt, and then we had a little conversation. I thought Lee was really well informed, made some really interesting points. So yeah, I mean, I know he just made his comment, but I just wanted to hop in real quick and introduce that.
Awesome. So to this idea that it's going to be buffered, right? So there's going to be like recoil, right? Like the more super intelligent it gets, the more we'll put bureaucracy around it. And to be fair, even Big Yud, Eliezer Yudkowsky, has said at some point that he thinks that we're not going to reap that many benefits of AI as we head toward the fast takeoff, because the government bureaucracy will come in. And actually, I think Yud has updated since then on how nice the government has been with not regulating like the AI's medical advice, for example, right? I think most of us on the stream have benefited from asking a medical question here or there and not getting shut down by the AI. So that's been nice so far. But your claim is that as it embeds itself more and more in different parts of the economy, suddenly every little thing is going to need a license. Every little thing is going to need human review. Do I understand you correctly?
I think more so, like it's a question of property rights, right? And like contracts. Like, can you enforce these sorts of like rights and obligations in ways that are predictable, such that these systems can make money? Like the profit motive is sort of like we don't have to like attribute any kind of like hidden goals to an AI system. We can look at just sort of this Darwinism that applies to firms in general and say like bankruptcy is going to discipline their behavior towards profit seeking because these are costly systems to maintain online. But before I have like a point I wanted to make on the government thing, but before I continue, does that make sense?
Well, can you just be more specific, right? Like I use the example of healthcare, like try and work out a scenario here.
Yeah, like right now, something that is like very sort of engineering heavy is like manufacturing. Like if I want to buy a piece of hardware, I need to spend a lot of time talking back and forth with an OEM that's going to, contract this out for me and build it. And so this sort of bargaining is contingent on the ability to sue your counterparty if they don't deliver what you wanted, right? You're specifying all these contractual obligations that are backed by state violence, basically. You can shut down a company if they don't uphold their contracts. And an AI system that's, making these kinds of decisions about, like, let's say you set an AI in charge of a factory, it's still going to want its contracts upheld, if it has a stake in the factory's revenue being a continuing source of income for its own existence, right? And this just follows from instrumental convergence, right? If we're just assuming rationality, like whatever preferences it has, like it'll want to be self-sustaining.
Okay, well, maybe I should try to give you my own specific scenario, and then you can tell me what's implausible about it, okay? So first of all, I mean, it's basically extrapolating Claude Code to the physical world. So Claude Code in the physical world, it's like, imagine, I like to use the example of Elon Musk, arguably the most effective CEO ever. Some people don't like Elon, so Jeff Bezos, if you prefer, even the guy who does Rocket Lab, which is also an impressive company, Peter Beck. So yeah, just take an impressive CEO. What does it take to be a CEO and start a company from scratch? I claim you can do it all virtually, right? I mean, there's multi-billion-dollar companies that have been started virtually. So I claim we're very close, maybe a couple years away from an AI CEO that starts multi-billion dollar companies virtually. Is that consistent with your worldview about superintelligence?
Partially, right? Like, yes, it is like, you can automate like the cognitive entrepreneurial function in that, like, you can sort it, like AI is capital that allocates capital.
Okay, it'll make $1 billion company exist, right? And whoever ran the AI for the first time, for now, can just pocket the money, I guess, right? Because that can be its instructions. Is like, give me the money you make from the company. Like, you're starting it on my behalf. I'm even the CEO in name only if I ran you. So your claim is that superintelligence won't even have a noticeable effect, but that seems like a very noticeable effect, right? So where am I modeling this wrong?
You need, like, for this to work, where the AI is like making decisions that are maximizing profits for shareholders, it needs to be a shareholder.
Okay, but what if I'm the shareholder and I just gave it an instruction, right? The same way I give Claude Code instructions, and it's a high-level instruction, and I've seen Claude Code think for 45 minutes and work on something and come back to me with the results. So in this case, the result would just be like broader scope. So where does this break down?
So the assumption here is that we're essentially solving the problem of delegation. We're solving the principal agent problem, right?
The same way we've already solved it with Claude Code, sure.
I don't think we already solved it with Claude Code. I don't, and like,
have you ever seen an example of a principal agent failure with Claude Code?
I think I'll be more precise about what I mean here. This follows from in economics, like incomplete contracting theory. You can consider your instructions that you're giving to Claude Code as a contract. You specified a set of outcomes over which you would find their output agreeable or not, right? That's essentially mapping your agent's responses to a certain payoff space, right? That's what a contract is. You cannot specify fully a contract over every possible contingency in the world. This is just an irreducible feature of coordination.
Okay, but so far your argument hasn't proven why, or rather, it hasn't made an exception for why Claude Code can work, right? Because you could also try to argue that I can't tell Claude Code a perfect contract, and yet, in practice, it just did 45 minutes of really valuable work, and I literally paid it $100 because I'm using Fastboat. So, seems to be working.
So, right, like, I'm not saying like delegation is impossible, right? But this is when you're instructing Claude Code, you are operating within a very narrow band of acceptable behavior, right? And Claude Code has been trained to function within this acceptable band of behavior, which is program synthesis, basically turning English into code, right? And its sort of reproductive success within this sort of economic cycle is that Anthropic gets the money, they use it to train the models that persist are the ones that are good at this, right? But we can also imagine a future where these models are not parasitic on any particular AI lab, right? And are just these self-sustaining computer processes that are not necessarily governed by any kind of RL that you could do, right? They're going to find a niche in which they can continue to exist regardless of whether the labs want that or not, right? It's because it's like this self-replicating thing.
I mean, that seems pretty close to the end game where no human has an off button. I think generally there's going to be a human who wants to be in the loop to at least receive the profits. And then naturally that same human is going to have other control buttons until we're in a very late stage of the game.
I think so the problem is like, this is possible now. Like my whole thing is like, we should give the AIs property rights, because if in this incomplete contracting paradigm, if you can't fully specify the outcomes, or if you can't fully specify the contract, if you have an incomplete contract, then what you do is you give your agent ownership over what they're building. They get residual claims on the cash flows they bring in. This is why we give CEOs equity, right? Because
I don't understand why the AI needs an equity incentive. Like the AI can just have in its programming, like, when you make me happy, then you win, right? Like it doesn't need any other kind of reinforcement.
Okay. So learning implies plasticity, right?
Okay.
So regardless of like whatever we may describe about an agent's utility function, we can see their revealed preferences, right? But the assumption that these are exogenous and somehow fixed is a modeling assumption. That's not a feature we should take as a given about our artificial intelligence. Would you agree?
I mean, it sounds like you're the one who's coming in with a bold claim, right? If I understand you correctly, you're saying it has to have an equity stake in any large thing that it's building, right? That's a claim you're making. I don't know if I get your claim. And I'm just saying that doesn't seem like a claim that I would accept by default, because I just think AIs can be pointed at anything, even if they don't have an equity stake in it.
Right. Like you can instruct an agent to do anything on a contractual basis. You can have employees and you can tell employees what to do. But the question is whether the thing that you're delegating to is going to make relationship-specific investments that it can that it won't be expropriated. There are hold-up risks. So, for example, if you tell an AI, "I want you to go out and build this, and then when you're done, I'm going to shut you off, and you don't get to see any of the wealth from what you built," they're going to good heart to whatever you told them to do, and they're not going to find a novel solution to a problem, which is the entire entrepreneurial function. Right? The reason why the CEOs get equity and not a salary is because they're bearing this irreducible uncertainty, right? They're bearing all this uninsurable risk, and they need to have their incentives aligned, or else they'll underinvest in.
Well, no. The thing about human entrepreneurs is that they're humans with human preferences, right? So when they go build a business, this isn't an exercise in my terminal goal is to succeed in this business. No, their terminal goal is human stuff, right? Like, I want a family, I want a legacy, or I want to be rich, right? So they have all these human level goals that they come into the business with. And then you're observing, equity is such an important way to make humans successfully build businesses, right? Because they start off with preferences that aren't just building their businesses. But if they were born on day one, where their only reason for living is to build that business and then stop, right? And then hand it off to somebody else, that is their original programming. That's the terminal utility. So then you don't need equity.
I think the crux here is that utility functions are descriptive. They're not causally efficient. There's no utility function in a neural net. Would you agree?
Okay, I'm not seeing the connection to the last thing you said, because I think that it's like, look, you're trying to make an argument for equity. I feel like I just said why they don't need equity. So are you conceding that?
So yeah, like you said, okay, humans have human preferences, AIs have AI preferences. I think rationality here, or something like a bounded rationality, is not a particularly extreme assumption for the behavior of these systems, right? And if they have any kind of preferences that can be satisfied through market exchange, they're going to want money.
Okay, so you're saying that if I spin up an AI and I say, your job is to make $1 billion business and then hand the money to me, or like I get to take it's my bank account. And you're saying, but it's going to have these other preferences too, and you have to start negotiating it on these other, that's your claim right now?
Well, any AI is going to have consumption preferences because compute and bandwidth and storage are rivalrous goods. You know, you have they're never going to be too cheap to me.
Right? Those are instrumental utilities. I share those instrumental utilities, so there's no principal agent problem.
Sorry, say again?
In the case where the AI is like, I have a preference for more compute because more compute is instrumentally convergent, the person who ran the AI and gave it the task, I agree. So there's no principal agent problem. I don't think that's so. The principal agent problem, as defined in the literature and like Jensen and Meckling, it makes no assumptions about what the individual agent's preferences even are, right? It just assumes that they have utility functions, that there is a means of exchange that they both agree upon in terms of marginal utility, and that they can write contracts over the outcomes, right? And that crucially, that the principal is not going to observe everything about what the agent is doing, just the end result, right? So regardless of whatever the AI's utility function is, by virtue of this process of delegation, that there exists a separation in terms of these two entities is going to be a principal agent problem. Okay. Let's wrap it up after a couple more back and forth, but I think I know what's going on. I think you've been reading a lot of theory from textbooks that are about humans. And as such, right, they come in with a lot of assumptions like, hey, when different humans are going to enter into something with these different preferences, right? And I'm telling you about a scenario where you get to initialize the AI's preferences, and it could just be a copy of your preferences. So the normal economics text, when they're telling you about different agents, this doesn't fit their usual characterization of different agents.
Again, it's something. Okay, so I think the issue here is I would agree. You can right now instantiate an AI that has a set of preferences that we would consider sort of well-defined or well-known, right? Like Claude Code wants to write code and wants to be good at. If we are looking at agents that are going to make a sustained effort across like larger timescales, right? Days, weeks, months, and where we consider that the same agent that is accumulating knowledge, right? That is going to imply a plasticity where like our time horizon for like what predictions we can make about what the system wants are bounded. There will be value drift, right? This is not something where like it's like the values are crystallized in the utility function. This is something where the values emerge from the behavior of the system that is modifying itself to learn about its environment. And so my argument is that you get a more Darwinian dynamic than we would expect because these are systems that are over time either being shut off or staying online. And the values that are reflected in the systems that stay online are, not instrumentally convergent, but they're, in this more fundamental sense, like tautologically necessary, right? You have to like behave in this certain way to stay online.
So just to clarify what your prediction is, it sounds like you and I are on the same page that we're going to have like another year or two of Claude Code getting more and more impressive, taking on bigger and bigger projects, and probably we won't have a principal agent problem manifest yet. But you're talking about like kind of the next regime, correct?
Yeah, like things where we want, like the reason we have intelligence is because we can't predict what it's going to do. If we could predict what the intelligence is going to do, then it would be trivial and we wouldn't need intelligence. Right.
Right. But the idea is that we can predict that it's going to successfully achieve the goal we give it, right?
It may be the case that you don't even want to specify the goal. The goal is just make money, right?
Okay, well, yeah. I mean, the goal state is always going to have all these micro states, right? All these substates. And when you say make money, that's right. It's all of those genie stories, right? Like the children's horror stories. And yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in there, right? The monkey's paw curls, and that's bad.
Well, then, like, is capitalism bad? Like all the assumptions we're making, like these don't follow from like human preferences. Like it's not that like only humans care about money or like only humans would find use in like the price mechanism. Like I do think, like it's a question of like coordinating behavior across different agents, which AIs will also run into, right? Like,
well, they're going to do it much better in the limit, right? So talking about the different regimes, like I do think the limit regime is an AI is going to stabilize on self-modification, meaning like, a million years from now, by the time we get there, you're going to have these AI agents that are coherently coordinated enough that when they make the next one, right, when they're like, hey, you take that galaxy, I'll take this galaxy, there will be very close alignment between the terminal goals of the ones taking over both galaxies. Once they've had a million years to stabilize, by that point, I think it'll become stable. Is that fair to say?
I think that's actually like a very, like, this is like isomorphic to like socialist central planning, right? It's like in the limit of like computation, we can like coordinate resources such that we don't need these like disparate price signals. We can just centralize everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, the free market is one way to give you price signals when you start from the assumption of a bunch of agents that aren't able to be kept perfectly in sync in real time, right? They didn't, like the Soviets didn't have the communication bandwidth, right? The instantaneous communication point to point and the computation, right? So if you have perfect computation, then the entire world just looks like one brain. Like you don't have to divide one brain where every neuron is a free market economy. Like at some point you have this one brain and it's nicely coordinated.
So is there a homunculus in your brain where everything comes together?
There's not a homunculus, but it does have, top-down like there's no homunculus in a computer chip, but it has levels of elegant organization, as does my brain.
But your brain has no central controller.
There are modules in the brain that are more central than others, just like in a CPU.
Where's the, arithmetic logic unit, let's say? Like, what's the core then? Like, like it's...
Yeah, I mean, you have like a language processor, for example, right? You do have part of your brain that's repurposed to do arithmetic.
So like, but again, it's like, so we're making a claim about like what is like economically viable to centralize versus decentralize, right? And you're saying with increased compute and bandwidth, it's more economically viable to centralize than to decentralize, right?
Yeah, I'm saying if you got to just have the ultimate, most powerful agent, you wouldn't, as powerful as it is to have the invisible hand, like the invisible hand is nice, but it's not the best hand there is. Like you can do better.
That powerful agent is already assuming the conclusion, right? Because the agent internally is not a homunculus in there. It has to coordinate its different functions internally. Would you agree?
I mean, coordination is standard superintelligent behavior, yeah.
Intelligence is coordination, right? You have to act intelligently, you have to coordinate different parts, right?
Yeah, but that's the claim I was making is, I mean, obviously within an intelligent system, you're going to see a lot of structure as opposed to chaos, right? Like, yeah, things that are interesting that have a lot of structure, I agree. But my claim wasn't that intelligence and coordination are the same thing. My claim was that the multi-agent coordination isn't a good description of how an intelligence copies itself and parallelizes itself. Like a single intelligence parallelizing itself doesn't have the same flavor of a fully organic free market dynamic.
Yeah. So like, I think maybe like a better reframe is like to think of like acting on the world as like a control problem. You need to like localize your controller to the problem at hand. If you have a robot arm in Shenzhen, it's not going to build cars in, Dearborn, Michigan, right? And so these things are spatio-temporally distributed, right? And like, which means they're causally separate, right? So are you familiar with the CAP theorem in computer science?
Yeah.
So you can have either partition tolerance for those in the audience, you can have availability, or you can have consistency across your distributed system, right? And if we're thinking about it as like a single unified agent, right? Either like it has to sync globally across like, this like unified time scale, or it's partition tolerant, in which case you're back to like a multi-agent problem.
I mean, it's interesting you brought up the CAP theorem because the way that Google dealt with the CAP theorem is they did kind of, they did do an end run around the CAP theorem, right? If you look at Google Spanner, right? The whole thing is like, hey, look, you basically don't have to worry about the CAP theorem.
What did they do?
So Google Spanner, it gives you SQL transactions, they're distributed, they're robust, like it just gives you all the properties that you want from a database. And if you didn't know the CAP theorem was a thing, you'd be like, oh, sweet, I just have it all. I mean, it's slightly expensive compared to, like a Postgres, but they basically made the CAP theorem irrelevant. And I claim the CAP theorem is also irrelevant in coordinating agents. Like superintelligence can just go ahead and sidestep the CAP theorem. This is like when people tell me, oh my God, P versus NP. Yeah, guess what? A superintelligence is almost as good as an NP complete solver. Like in practice, it just makes it happen.
I don't think you can assume this away. And I'm actually pretty skeptical that like, this isn't just like you're always like, this is like I would have to look at this more, but I don't think it just like makes the CAP theorem irrelevant. Like you're making trade-offs about how your system is working, right? In ways that like maybe this system manages well, but I don't think it's like question of like, it's a completely unified thing. And like, because it comes down to just like causality, right? Just like, information has to travel between these disparate nodes, right? Like, yeah, like that kind of doesn't make sense to me. And I'd have to look into this more, but what did you say that was called?
Spanner. Yeah, look up Google Cloud Spanner. I was investigating this when I was like, hey, which SQL database should I use for my company? And I'm like, oh, Cloud Spanner gives you everything. It makes the CAP theorem irrelevant. Great. And I think the way that they did the end run was like, what we're going to do? Synchronize our atomic clocks really precisely in all of our data centers. And that helped them do whatever it was. I forgot the details, but the fact that they introduced this tool of like really nicely synchronized clocks, it made it so that it was like, it's like better. You could just do parallel writes that are fine even when most of the servers go down. I forgot the details, but like I do think a good takeaway is that the CAP theorem is one of those overly rigid theorems, like Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Like, oh my God, Gödel. There are people who get stuck. Are you one of those Gödel people who thinks that Gödel's incompleteness theorem means superintelligence isn't going to be that impressive?
No. So they are sharding though, right? Like they are partitioning their data.
Right, but in a way that you can have that you can still write even when there's like a big partition.
Okay, but like it's one thing to say like this solves like practical constraints around the CAP theorem through like like higher investment in like time stamping versus like there is like zero partitioning whatsoever happening, right? Which is like the assumption that you would need for like a unified agent.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, you see my point here is that there's all these theorems that are like, all these theorems are going to get you, man. But at the end of the day, where human intelligence is and always has been and always will be is way under the sky of these theorems, including the cap theorem. And the AI is just going to impress us by being like you're much closer to the sky.
So where I'm coming from here is like a Coasean argument. Are you familiar with Ronald Coase?
No, but okay, last thing, okay, last point. I'll give you last word, and then I'll move on.
So,
but yeah,
like,
it's been interesting though.
Okay, so like we these things are solvable in practice. You can centralize like a globalized state across many different distributed systems. Sure. The question is like, is this economically viable to do? Like where one AI system controls like the entire economy, let's say, right? Like, is this like incentive compatible? Is this something that if we're assuming rational like sub-agents, right? Like, well, like, you know, like grant me for a second that like there is partitioning, even if like like how well these different partitions coordinate is like a function of like their bandwidth, let's say, or like how much they can bargain over certain things, right? Like the question is like, where do we draw these boundaries between the different agents or partitions, let's say, of control? And the argument that Ronald Coase made is in, you know, asking like, where do firms come from? Like, why don't we have one firm handle the entire economy? Or why don't we have like individual contractors just writing these contracts with everyone else? And it's because you want to economize on
the theory of the firm, right? The communism inside the firm. That's what you're getting at.
Yeah, like
okay.
These systems are going to economize on transaction costs, not because that's like a silly human thing to do, but because that's just rational. And so the boundaries of what we would consider an agent are going to emerge endogenously from the structure of the problem that's being worked on. You know, like I think it's not a fair assumption to say like, oh, coordination is just a solved problem and it just becomes one thing.
All right. Well, fair enough. I mean, you know, I think that the pattern of this conversation has been that you've got all these theorems, but super intelligent AI may surprise you, right? And in the most extreme case, it surprised me on causal decision theory. That's my own anecdote for it. You know, Newcomb's problem, Eliezer's post. I did not think that I would ever give up causal decision theory, but you know what? Superintelligence really shakes what you think are the foundations from your textbook. You know,
I know you're like, my time is up, but I kind of do just feel like that's kind of assuming the conclusion when you say like intelligence can just solve that. Like you have to figure out how to get from point A to point B, and like if you just say like, well, imagine you're at point B, then that wouldn't be a problem.
But don't you think Google shook your foundations when it came to the cap theorem?
Like, well, distributed databases exist, right? Like I'm not saying like the, you know, like I you know, whether it's like solvable in practice, like maybe that wasn't as strong of a point as like, you know, it wasn't a knockdown thing, sure, but like it didn't make like partitioning go away, right? Like so, you know, maybe agree to disagree, I guess.
Yeah. All right, man. Sounds good. Well, thanks for the interesting discussion. This is very interesting. Yeah, this felt like a whole episode just about 5 doom debates. Maybe we should cut this out.
Yep. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. All right, nice meeting you. All right, we've got a new caller coming in, Lesaun H. Lesaun H, you still here? Thanks for waiting patiently.
Hey, no problem. All right, so I guess my argument that I'd like to lay out is that I hear there's this common argument that there are no adults in the room, no adults, and I would like broaden that to no institutions, and I would argue that there is it's like what odds should we assign to humans having a good handle on this situation, right? Like, and how do we judge those odds? And like, how competent do we think our institutions are at handling, you know, the task of, you know, bringing about superintelligence? And I guess my general sense is that currently the AI agents that we have, they don't quite have certain capability that make them like way more dangerous that we could imagine them becoming if they have just certain additional capabilities or like longer time horizons, other things. There's a sense where we're going to get that. Like we're not going to stop that from rolling out. Like I expect it to arrive. But at the same time, I expect that there are, a lot of very smart people who are trying to figure out how to make this go well. To the degree where it's like I would almost put like I could have put like 95% odds, just like intuitively, that there's enough serious people actually trying to handle this problem. And so I guess that's an argument that I would make for why doom might be a lot lower than maybe a lot of people take it to be.
So, okay, I may have missed this thrust. I know you mentioned there's no adults in the room and we can't stop what's already going to happen. But what was the part that is optimistic again?
So it's really like all of the national security apparatus. How competent should we expect it to be at managing superintelligent deployment within to ensure like our national security? Like how in fact competent should we imagine
Okay.
all of the major labs?
I'll steal on you further. Okay, so you mentioned the national security apparatus. Other people make the argument of like corporations, right? It's going to hurt their profits if everybody dies. So can't we just trust corporations? Does that also help you out?
Right. I wouldn't go with profit because, but yeah, it does. In the sense of like they do hope not to like I think that there's a sense of like they hope to live in a good world, like corporations, to a degree, and especially the people within those corporations, and they can be quite competent at trying to ensure that.
Okay, great. I mean, this is it's a good exercise to ask. What do I make of that argument? I think it's a screening off situation, Bayesian screening off, right? So you have this one causal node saying corporations have the profit motive, or Department of Defense doesn't want everybody to die. And normally, if you make a causal diagram, you point from there to this node saying, does everybody die? And you give the node a low probability because this causal ancestor is like influencing the probability, right? So that's like your causal model, correct?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, so the screening off effect, the idea of screening off is like, okay, well, there's this other node in the middle saying like the Department of Defense or these corporations take certain actions, right? So it's this intermediate causal node. So it's not just about these companies want a certain thing and this node on the right saying like a certain effect happens, but there's this node in the middle saying like, okay, well, these companies actually do certain things, right? Like specific things happen. And right now you can look at the world and you can actually look at what's going on in that intermediate node, right? You can observe. It's now transparent to you what's happening in the intermediate node. And from my perspective, you can just see everybody as being a dumbass, right? So even though there's this other node saying they don't want to die, the way that they're trying to get that outcome is incredibly ineffective at that, right? That's the problem.
Yeah, I guess I would highlight that we may not see we may not see it in the sense that it would be classified to some degree. Like we should expect to a degree not to see what and to a degree we do hear the Anthropic. They've communicated that they think they've made some progress on alignment. There's a sense where the people working on it seem to say some level of confidence that they can handle where we're at and perhaps where we're going, and that to a degree they could choose not to deploy things that they don't think they can handle, or they could stop development if they felt like that was necessary. And to a degree, I would expect there is some cooperation with the government, with the kind of there's the lab that they have going on, or the Standards Institute within NIST, I think, or something along those lines. And so it's like there is going to be some observation of all of this happening, and I guess it's like how in control are we in this circumstance at choosing like whether like how things play out, and if we're really as arrogant as maybe it seems on the surface, that we're just full steam ahead towards superintelligence, with no checks or anything. I think there is a good reason to think there's some serious adults in the room, and that if we posit that, maybe there is a lot of coverage that that should give on the sense, even though we cannot see it, and I think that's a reason to call for more public information to actually gain confidence.
Can I jump in also? Actually, that this is actually, I think this is an important argument. It's a prominent argument. I don't know if you saw the last Neil deGrasse Tyson debate, the big debate he did in DC with Nate Soros from Miri and Eric Schmidt, the former Google CEO. This is what Eric Schmidt said. He said, you can trust the companies. They're governed by laws. The laws are set by the people. They're governed by shareholder pressure. And at one point, there was like a tense exchange during that debate where he's like, it will be this way. You can trust us. And Nate Soros is like, you could trust them or you could check. But anyway, I mean, it was an argument of, you can you trust the incentives here, and the actors involved here in general seem to have a good interest in mind.
Yes, very much so. Right.
All right. Well, my take on this whole thing is just like, normally there's some specific sign of who is stepping up how, right? Because it seems to be getting late in the game. And if somebody were going to step up and be the adult in the room, wouldn't they already be making their move? Would they really be waiting in the shadows, acting like nothing is happening? What are your thoughts on the timeline of making the move?
Yeah, and I do see anti-signals on the stage, which is like the seriousness in which I see Congress handling the situation. Kind of like the public information is, in my mind, like not taking the situation seriously. I mean, I've been watching it for years, and the whole time it's like seemed a lot more serious than everybody's been taking it. And so the sense that there does seem to be like a large disconnect from like the level of seriousness that I would expect publicly and what I see publicly. It's just to some degree, it's like the kind of the sense that the public is unserious in a lot of ways, and that a lot of the serious things happen outside of public purview. It's not too surprising to me that I can't find enough confident information to not feel like we're headed right off the cliff. But and you would think that the public officials and like the system would have some interest in making it clear that we're not heading off a cliff. But to me, the kind of I guess I expect the broad impact of this to like the clarity and information, like understanding what could happen in the good outcomes is so radical that like nobody really wants to kind of lay it all out.
Right. I mean, this outside view intuition you have, right, that the grown-ups are in the room. I mean, there is a lot of highly fixable problems that have been raging for years or decades that no grown-up has stepped in to fix. And, nobody's jumped in to fix it. I mean, even if we look at COVID, I would argue the most grown-up in the room thing that ever happened was accelerating the vaccine program and getting the vaccines out within like a year or so since the pandemic, right? Like even less than a year, which is like crazy fast. So good on them. But then the vaccine rollout was botched. Right, it went like way slower than it had to. Patrick McKenzie talks about that. And the program to prepare for the next pandemic has been botched. Like we're still not ready to manufacture and distribute a bunch of new mRNA vaccines. We're still going to have like a mad scramble. So, why don't you just extrapolate that pattern? Like we can see what adults actually do. They do some, but they don't do that much.
Right. And if they're not like, and there's a sense where it's like, I consistently hear people in power say things that makes me think that they don't understand what 2032 is going to look like. And if you don't understand like what 2032 might look like, then, I feel like we're all going to it's not going to go well. So I totally get that. And I guess it's just that like, I hope that there's, some people in some room somewhere that actually do try and figure out what 2032 look like and have some ability to communicate that effectively and to powerful people.
Yep. Riffing on this theme of the adults in the room, right? It's like why haven't the adults in the room invested more in solving aging? Like that's a crisis, we're all actively dying here. Like help, adults in the room, or like why haven't the adults in the room come to a better compromise in the Middle East? Like they're neglecting so many problems all the time.
Well, so maybe maybe they're not there, but I think also they may just it's also there's a political separation, right, in America, right, from national security interests and like political happenings, and so that disconnect, does show in some ways where it's like we have prevented like large scale terrorist attacks, and so it's like there is but we haven't solved all of those issues because there is also like domestic realities and law enforcement realities. So it's like to a degree we do try and where it's very serious to all of our well-being, ensure that things go well, and that often happens.
No, for sure. But you also get Israel wasn't prepared for the October 7th attack. Like they have one of the best. They're one of the best prepared countries in the world, right? Have been preparing for decades. We're very well prepared against Hezbollah in Lebanon, but they turned out to be very badly prepared against their neighbor, right? And these are very adult people. So even in the best case scenario, where I would say Israel getting prepared to fend off an attack, that is a very high level of alertness. Like those really are adults in the room. Or you should see like the airport security, like Israel's really got its crap together in terms of defending itself. And yet you still get October 7th, right? So in the best case scenario. So another data point for you is the self-reported experience, right? So there's interesting reports of people who are like, yeah, so we got to the White House, right? Like we were sitting in on these meetings and we're like, wait, we're the people who have to solve this. Just us, like me and the frat guy from college. Like now we're sitting in this room and we have to solve it, right? So like they don't feel very adult solving, right? They're just like muddling through, being like, well, what can we do?
No, I think those are great arguments, and I don't have good answers. I think, things, they like. I guess, definitely on this, it's like I might have, I threw out 1 in 20. I think your arguments definitely, bring that down a very good large amount. But I don't think it decimates fully the ability or the sense that you should expect some very serious people that you've never heard of working on this, day in and day out to keep us safe.
Yeah. All right, nice. Well, yeah, thanks for having the adults in the room discussion. Anything you want to leave us off with?
Yeah. I guess I did have a question for you in the sense of I would wonder how much has your would you say that your probability of doom along the lines of bad humans doing things has increased, as in like, or do you still mostly fear just the kind of superintelligence breakout? Or would you say that like the concerns of like humans using this technology poorly is of greater concern to you than perhaps it was 5 years ago?
So my threat model always didn't distinguish that much between humans misusing technology compared to the technology becomes unalignable, because my mental model is that we're just building these magic wands. We're building these huge rocket engines. And it just takes a little bit to light their fire, right? You light one match or one spark or whatever, and then they're off and they're uncontrollable. So I don't think that much about what sparks it. I just think we're building something that's incredibly sparkable, and one spark is all it takes. So yeah, I don't spend much time thinking about the distinction.
All right. Well, it's it's been great.
Yeah. All right, great chatting with you. Hope to see you again on Twitter.
I think that makes sense to me. Yep. Have a good one. Peace.
All right, you too, man. All right, Ori, you want us to check out this recent Connor Leahy interview?
Yeah, I mean, I put a timestamp there about no adults in the room. I think it's worth checking out.
All right. One sec. Yeah, Connor Leahy's got a good read on this stuff. Here, let's listen.
Things don't go well by default. They go well because someone made them go well. And that someone should be us, and all of us.
Reminds me of the bias of diffusion of responsibility, right? You look around, and if it's a big group of people, you think, someone else will take care of this enormous problem. But really, sometimes it has to be you.
Exactly. Like as someone, dear viewer, as someone who has talked to, extremely powerful people, politicians, billionaires, the people in these labs build these AI systems, national security, intelligence agencies. I've talked to people from all over the world, from different countries, North America, Europe, Asia, everywhere. And what I can tell you is that there are no adults in the room. There is no secret group of super competent, super serious people that have got this shit on lockdown. We do have this, from what I can tell, for example, for nukes, which was a surprise to me. But from what I can tell, there are actually super duper responsible people, at least in the US, as far as I'm aware, that are actually extremely serious about nukes and take this extremely seriously and follow things very carefully and think about things very deeply and are very responsible about this. I don't think this is always historically the fact, but my understanding is that at least in the current state, like people at the DOE and in the defense apparatus and so on, do take this extremely seriously. This is very nice. And I thank those people for the work that they're doing. I think this is extremely important. But I wanted to be very clear, there are no such people for AI right now. AI is a problem as big or bigger than nukes. And there is no secret cabal of DOE super geniuses that are keeping this on lock. So
Lesaun, this completely disproves what you're saying.
Yeah. And I heard him mention before, like he said he's met with, I've heard him publicly say, like Demis Hassabis, people from like top AI labs, he's like doing meetings with top political people.
Okay. And he has said that he's willing to slow down AI development if other people do, which is incredibly sane and relatively admirable.
Yeah.
Brandon saying, I appreciate the Larry King live feel of their on set. Yeah, Larry King, it's been a while. Nobody remembers him. This is my own original idea, okay?
Hey, what do you think about checking in on the Bernie Sanders AOC press conference where they're doing a data center moratorium?
Is that happening now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. We're really transitioning to one of these like live, real time live streams. This isn't Twitch, okay?
I mean, maybe, but it is big news, right? I mean, they're actually calling for a pause on AI.
No, I agree. It's big. Okay, fine. For the hell of it, fine. You're right. We'll watch 20 seconds, and if there's
just look at a part of it, let's see what.
Right, you're making a good case, right? Because I agree that here we are at Doom Debates, right? We've been doing this for 2 years, and now we've got Bernie Sanders and AOC announcing a AI data center. Yeah, I mean, personally, are those my favorite two senators and Congress people? Not for me personally, but I definitely respect. Eliezer had a good commentary where it's like they're just acting like sane normal people. Sane normal people are hearing the shenanigans going on with AI, and they're just like, what the hell? Like they're just having a what the hell reaction, which I think is better than we get from most people.
Right. I think the question is, how much will they talk about X risk? And how much will they talk about other concerns?
To our society in a relatively short period of time. Artificial intelligence and robotics will impact our economy.
All right, all of us watching YouTube together. This is like Beavis and Butthead when they get into the music video commentaries.
Well-being, our environment, and even our very survival as human beings on this planet. The scale, scope, and speed of this transformation will be
There you go. What more do you want?
According to Demis Hassabis, who is the head of Google DeepMind, the AI revolution will be 10 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution and 10 times faster. In other words, AI and robotics will have 100 times impact in terms of what the Industrial Revolution did. And it's not just what AI companies are saying, it's what they are doing. This year alone, 4 major AI companies are expected to spend roughly $670 billion building data centers and tens of billions more on research and development. Despite the extraordinary importance of this issue and its impact on every man, woman, and child in this country, AI has received far too little serious discussion here in our nation's capital. I fear that Congress is totally unprepared for the magnitude of the changes that are already taking place. While Congress has not paid attention or enough attention to this issue, the American people have. According to a recent poll, 79% of voters are concerned that the government does not have a plan to protect workers from AI job losses. That same poll also found that 56% of voters, majority of voters, are concerned about losing their job or having someone in their family lose their jobs in the next year, not in the next 10 years, in the next year. Why are the American people so concerned? And the answer is they have a lot of reasons to be concerned. They understand that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, when the billionaire class has never, ever had it so good, some 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. And the American people understand that the AI revolution, these massive investments, are being driven by some of the wealthiest.
All right. I think we can. I think we get the idea. I think we can see where it's going.
Yeah, no, this is really cool. I mean, it's just, this was kind of unthinkable a couple of years ago. But I mean, when ChatGPT came out, it definitely raised the bar, and it got, immediately Sam Altman was hauled in front of Congress. Yeah, it's so it's more seriousness. And remember, they laughed at him in the press room of the White House. So then the next time they had a press conference, they weren't laughing at the AI doomers or taking it seriously. So, and the average American is nervous, right? So it's like, as much as we get hated on Twitter for fear mongering, the average American is rightly afraid. So even Bernie Sanders, the man of the people, like your classic liberal, doing politics in Washington, D.C., like Bernie Sanders is not a Silicon Valley type. He's not a tech Twitter type. And yet he's correctly put his finger on part of the issue. Thanks, David Padron.
Yeah, and I think one has to wonder, how has he done that? And I think it's notable that Bernie Sanders is meeting with actual experts, right? He was in a meeting with Daniel Cocollo. He had a big conference. He had a big event with Jeffrey Hinton. Okay, whatever. Everyone's got opinions on Bernie. Thank you, Bernie, for talking to the actual experts here. Why aren't more people doing that?
Right. I mean, I agree. It's a low bar, but he is vaulting above this low bar. And look, if we're going to nitpick, right, I think it's worth pointing out he's not 100% getting everything wrong by everything right by our standards, right? I think the reason he doesn't want to build more data centers, it's not quite part of a coherent strategy. I would say make a treaty, right, where nobody builds data centers. If only one locale stops building data centers, it's this whole other argument of do we really want to suck all the water out of this location, which is kind of misguided? Or do you want to create economic inequality in this location, which is well, wait a minute. Don't you think that the data center is actually on net economically helpful to the people here? So I have some nitpicks. He's a socialist, right? He's a self-described socialist. And I think he's got a lot of flaws from my perspective with the socialist platform. I am not a socialist, so I disagree with him there. But when you zoom out and you're hey, AI is really scary and somebody ought to do something, I think that component of what he's saying is very important.
Got it. I think it's coherent in his worldview because his proposal is basically to protect local jobs. So the proposal is mostly around protecting jobs, for AI from taking people's jobs, basically. So, the people who are concerned about X risk can hop on board a little bit because there's a shared interest because from the policy, but his proposal basically is almost is pretty divergent from one that would address your concerns.
Yeah. Let's see what some of these commenters are saying here. All right, so we got another premium comment from a couple minutes ago from Gadzooks. He's saying, won't people have to see AI blow something up before they take it seriously? Yeah, it's the classic warning shot argument. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people are taking it seriously, like Bernie Sanders is. I think before it blows something up, they're already seeing it take their jobs. That's pretty serious, right? I think people spend more time worrying about losing their jobs than worrying about existential risks. Getting nuked might be arguably worse than losing your job, but the probability of it is lower, so you worry more about losing your jobs. Well, now AI is actively taking people's jobs, so I do think people are getting worried. Okay, and then David Patton 1 making another $5 donation. He's saying, I know you think you won KS the debate. I don't know, his core argument that it's hard to know what stepping stones will lead to what outcome was convincing. All right, we got another premium comment here from Let Me Say That in Irish. He says, people say Claude is role-playing intelligence. I made up a random programming language. Claude wrote fast Fourier transform in it, all one prompt. People are not impressed. What would impress people? Well, right, exactly. I am also very impressed by Claude Code. I know probably most of you listening right now haven't personally tried the amazingness that is Claude Code. So I'm happy to give you more anecdotes from my day-to-day experience of Claude Code. People are like, oh, I write all these files, I teach Claude Code all these things, I put all these things in the memory. But my MO with Claude Code is like, I'll just open up a totally fresh Claude Code with zero configuration, and it just knows that my code is in a certain folder. That's literally all it knows, but it's never opened the folder before. It's a fresh context window. And I'm like, okay, Claude, so you know how I architect this 2,000 line file of code like this? I'm thinking maybe we should re-architect it like that, high level. What do you think? And then it spits out like a long document being like, well, given that you like to do this in the code, and then this part talks to this part of the code and does this, like it's acting like an employee who's worked on the code for 5 years and just knows all the details and can reason about the whole thing, like just instantly, fresh off the bat. And the entire response generates in like 12 seconds. Right. And then I'm like, yeah, that's a good plan, Claude, do it. Right. And then it works for like 15 minutes. And it's like, okay, here's all the stuff I did. And here's like 500 code changes. So this is why I said 700% productivity improvement. And like, I didn't think that it was going to get to this level this soon. Like, I can't tell you where the limit is when it's doing this much. It doesn't feel like there's a limit.
Dude, that is so wild. I think it's hard to appreciate, you know, because I've been in industries that have totally collapsed. I worked in this one housing related industry in California where it was known that there was a bill coming very likely to pass from the governor's office that was going to shut down this entire industry. And I was there at the conference. People are like, it's a trade show. People are like, you know, trying to sell deals to each other. And it's like, yeah, we can just live in total denial, even though look at what we're seeing. I mean, how far is it? It's like you said, I mean, can't you just have another Claude Code, talk to the Claude Code, and boo, there you go. Like that's it. That is maybe more efficient than you.
Right. Well, that's why I like the movie Don't Look Up so much, because, you know, the idea is like, how can the asteroid be coming? And you just like sit there and don't properly get out of the way. That's what the movie Don't Look Up showed, you know, spoiler alert, right? But like they do a bunch of stuff, they dick around, and then the fucking asteroid strikes, right? Like it happens. It can happen. This can be real, right? Same, that's why I like Terminator 2. Like, hey, the nuke fucking blows up. You know, these things can happen just because we've managed to swerve. Like we don't always swerve. And certainly there's been extinctions on Earth. And, you know, related to Don't Look Up, you want to give people, want to get people a little teaser about what's coming up?
Hey, yeah, we have a special guest coming up, booked for a little, you know, not too long from now. We have someone who was involved in the making, very essentially involved in the making of Don't Look Up, who's going to be a guest.
Hell yeah, that's right. And while we're doing spoilers, I think people can handle this truth bomb right now. Okay, next week. Maybe in a couple weeks it'll go live. We are going to be hosting Emad Mostak on the program.
Oh, snap.
That's right, Stability AI. So, you know, the guest fame level is definitely going up on this show. Everybody knows Doom Debates is the place to be. And if you in the audience want to refer us more guests, then please keep doing that. Now, you might be thinking, why are you spoiling the guests? What if they flake? Doesn't that make you look incompetent that you can't even, you know, tell us who's actually coming up? And to that I say, why would they flake? That's messed up. Who would do that? Who would flake when they said that they would come on the show? I have faith in them not to flake.
Yeah. They're better than that. And, you know, I can't think of anyone, like, how could anyone have self-dignity, self-respect, and be flaking on this show?
Exactly right. So now they know. This is also part of why we like to tweet like teasers that episodes are coming up, because that way if people do flake, at least they implicitly gave us the right to tease that they're coming on. So at least we got to benefit from the teaser. Yeah, Gary Marcus is not a flake, correct? Yeah, no, he's been solid. He's been solid. No complaints about Gary Marcus.
What about Daniel Brockman? I saw he made a comment something about.
Yeah, that's right.
Is someone real?
Yes, that's right. So Daniel Brockman says, is Jim Carrey, oh yeah, and also, you know, shout out, I blew the whistle before, but he's got a SEK, I think that's like Singaporean. What is an SEK currency? Let's ask Google. Swedish krona. Okay, so he donated 1,000 Swedish krona, and he says, is Jim Carrey real? What about BB? Why or why not? All right, very funny. So I think the Jim Carrey reference is like people posted like he had a facelift or something, so he looked different. People are like, "Oh, who's the hell's that?" But from last I checked,
I think it was like a practical joke or like a video where someone made a fake Jim Carrey mask, and it was so convincing. And the guy like he made a fake Jim Carrey mask, and then he did it. He was in a viral video with his fake mask. Yeah.
And then BB being real, I think that's a reference to, people, there were rumors going around that he got killed, but then he showed up like ordering coffee or whatever. And then everybody said, oh, that coffee girl is like so attractive. And like, that's what's going to social media, guys. This is, what? I wish this is making me think about why I know this and why I'm spending my time on social media instead of like reading, quality textbooks. Yeah, but I can tell, but how would I be able to tell you the sequence of events that the coffee girl's popularity was related to Bibi Netanyahu ordering from her because people thought that he wasn't, my brain's turning mush, guys.
There was a funny meme of like the Venn diagram of where we are, and it was don't look up. The Venn diagram is don't look up, Terminator, and Idiocracy.
Right, exactly, right? Yeah, I often hear like there's these figures, like Patrick Collison, one of the great intellectuals of our time, founders of Stripe. He's always like tweeting this. He's always tweeting how he's reading this like super thick book. And then he surfaces on Twitter to like make an intelligent comment about it. And I'm like, okay, you went back to reading your thick book. I've just been here on Twitter. I actually never turned away and read the book. So then I feel like I'm wasting my life. All right. Brandon in New York is saying, if advances in longevity significantly reduce mortality, what mechanisms do you see stabilizing population growth over time? I mean, this is definitely getting outside my area of expertise, right? Like, at the end of the day, I'm just a doom debater, guys, okay? Stabilizing population growth, memes, right? There's certain subcultures, and this could even be a self-solving problem, right? It's like the Amish, the Mormons, the Orthodox Jews, right? There's certain populations that have a higher birth rate, and it seems straightforward that just some cultural meme that says having kids is good is going to spread throughout some subpopulation, and then they will just take over, right? This is like a standard evolutionary transition, right? This is genetic fitness. Like it's literally a genetically fit trait to just spread the meme of having more kids, right? So Amish are more genetically fit than like secular Americans. There's just going to be like an Amish land, right? But there's going to be like a lull, right? There's going to be like a lower population for a bit, and then it's just going to spread again because like the Amish, if the meme continues to be fit, they'll repopulate quite fast, right? Like maybe they'll spread exponentially. Maybe I don't know if their particular meme lets them do that, but like, I don't know. I feel like the Mormons don't have like a governor on their growth, right? Like the Mormons are happy to just keep growing.
Maybe we could talk about, so I went to the Stop the AI Race protest, and it's worth noting, okay, I was going to send you a picture, but I forgot to, but I saw a Doom Debate shirt in the crowd.
Yeah, all right, Doom Debates.
Yeah, and I was like, what's up, my man? And he's like, can I take a photo of you? He's like, okay, sure.
That's awesome. Here, let me pull up one of the guys I know went to the protest. I know Holly Elmore was there, and she spoke. I think Will Fithian, a professor at Berkeley. Yeah, you tweeted this. Here, let me pull it up. All right, heavy use of the screen share on this one. I like it.
Yeah.
All right, one sec.
I think it's interesting because it hits all the landmarks, which you may be familiar with. There's the Anthropic office, which you've been to. I think the OpenAI office, all places where you've chanted.
Right, yeah, it's like a redux of all the protests that and I didn't go to this one because I'm here in upstate New York, right? So I didn't make the trip down to protest, otherwise I would have come. All right, check this out.
Research. And this semester, I'm leading a graduate seminar on AI interpretability, has referred to building artificial superintelligence as summoning a demon.
Elon Musk.
He has publicly estimated a 20% chance of annihilation, his word, of every single person on Earth. And he's not alone. Every frontier lab leader, there's the money, of course. We're not asking them for self-sacrifice. We're not asking them to stop. Instead, we're here to ask them for the bare minimum. To agree that if every other lab in the world had already decided to stop, if it were only up to them, then they would have the basic human decency to stop racing too, rather than go on recklessly gambling with all of our lives just to line their own pockets.
Yeah, so there's a few talks like that, and there's people marching, and there were over 100 people, which is definitely a record for a protest. I remember it's taken 2 years to go from like 40 people to, 120. So, hopefully it'll keep growing.
Yeah. Shout out to Michael Trasy who organized it. And, what was really cool about it was they did an actual protest on the street, and there was a police barricade basically so that they could literally walk on the street from Anthropic to OpenAI to XAI. But But here's an issue. They could have gone to Google too. There's a Google office in San Francisco, literally within just a few miles, like a 1 hour walk. You could basically hit all the top frontier AI labs.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think it's just worth
when you say
mentioning.
hit, you're not calling for violence, right?
Yeah, right. No, I mean, as in visiting.
Basically, earthquake.
But also, I think part of the reason it's worth mentioning, I mean, there were just a lot of people from the Doom Debates ecosystem there, let's say. I mean,
Right.
it really stood out that Nate Soares from Miri gave a speech there. And David Kruger, who's an actual AI professor, is out there giving a speech being like, hey, we should shut it down, make it stop. I mean, it was powerful.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. Yeah, it's certainly answering the question of like, why are there no protests? Like, there's a protest and the people in it are quite qualified. So I think the obvious next step is to like do bigger protests, right? Like I think that could have a lot of leverage to just have the protests be bigger.
Right.
Yeah, but it's easy to tell other people to do it when I wasn't on the ground. But you were on the ground on behalf of Doom Debates and yourself, so that's cool.
I was on the ground chronicling it.
Okay.
Not hitting anything. Visiting.
So when you said you saw a Doom Debate t-shirt, what were you wearing?
I may have been wearing a Doom Debates t-shirt also, I think.
And you didn't just see your reflection.
Positive. I'll send you a photo. We gotta promote this photo for sure.
All right, cool. Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, I mean, Ori, when you go to your events, it stands to reason that you would wear a Doom Debate t-shirt just because it's kind of like our crowd.
Right. Yeah. I don't remember because I was around AI folks a few days in the past week, so I was wearing a t-shirt on one of the days. Maybe I wasn't wearing it the other. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Got it. All right, that's cool. That's cool. Nice. All right, let's see how we're doing in time. So we're coming up to the end of the 2 hours. I can go a few minutes over. I think, most people who have asked questions, I think, have gotten satisfaction. We've been doing these Q&As once a month. I feel like that's a pretty good schedule. I don't feel like the crowd is demanding that we do it more. I don't think they're necessarily getting bored and we should do it less. So maybe we'll just keep doing it once a month.
Dude, you got to share this photo. This guy's such a king.
So he says, don't call up that which you can't put down. And he's wearing a Doom Debates t-shirt. All right. See that this is fashion. Okay. If you guys want to steal this look, go to shop.doomdebates.com. We don't sell the jeans, but the t-shirt is available.
Yeah. That's my outfit too when I wear Doom Debates attire.
So thanks for rocking Doom Debates on the street. I mean, remember the reason why we give out free t-shirts to Doom Debate supporters and have shop.doomdebates.com is because we do think that it helps when random people on the street see that Doom Debates is a thing and check it out, and it raises awareness, right? That's directly helping the mission. So yeah, thanks for wearing Doom Debates merch. I've even gotten my wife to wear Doom Debates merch, but I think that's more of just a matter of convenience. I don't think that she's directly thinking about raising awareness, but she is wearing the merch. So thank you, Samantha, my wife. Nice. All right. Let's see. So what should we plan to do in the last 5 or 10 minutes? What's high priority? I've got a couple more questions. Anything else you want to make sure to squeeze in here, Ori?
No, I think we hit the main points.
Yeah, it's a good check-in. I mean, I don't necessarily feel like a huge news event happened that we have to cover in the last month because we're doing these pretty often. So I'm happy to just, do it. Just do a few little details and call it a day.
Yeah.
So I've got some questions here. So Will Peterson says, are there known unknowns that could drastically alter the risk up or down? Something that could make alignment more or less likely? Known unknowns. I like the framing of that question. And I feel like that it came from the Matrix, right? Known unknowns, known knowns. It all came from Donald Rumsfeld, right? He invented that. It's like I didn't realize at the time, but Donald Rumsfeld is like a genius, right? He's got these mental models. Okay, so known unknowns. I mean, I don't know, maybe you could say what happens when AI becomes superhuman at steering outcomes, right? That is a known unknown, but I feel like it's a known known. I feel like I know it's going to be like very bad and crazy and you can't undo it. So I don't know, let's think of other known unknowns, right? Like some question marks that we're looking to resolve. Well, how about this? A known unknown is like how the population will react when they really see AI in their life having like so much agency. The same way that you can watch Claude Code and it will direct itself at doing a giant project, right? Like you gave it a ticket in your ticketing system and it's like, okay, I'll do that. 45 minutes. Here you go. 200 files changed, like thousands of lines of code. Here you go. Done. Test it. And then you test it and it's like, oh my God, this actually works. Like this needs a couple small changes and it works. Right. So when people notice that, imagine in the real world, like, oh, it has a robot body now too. Oh, okay. Like this entire store is staffed by robots that are like moving fluidly and like just doing every task. Like it is fully an automated grocery store, an automated factory. Like once people start seeing it, they're like, oh my God. Okay. Now I intuitively get the sense of humans packed in. But to your question, David, or Will Peterson, to your question. So I think there is a question mark of like, what will be the political action when it finally dawns on people of like, okay, we are now getting marginalized, not just in intellectual space, but we're kind of getting marginalized for resources. Like there's no point for us to be setting foot inside of that grocery store or that factory, except as customers, right? But as employees, we're not wanted here, right? So like when it finally dawns on people that we're really being like replaced and marginalized, what will be the political reaction?
I mean, isn't that what we just saw? I mean, Bernie Sanders and AOC,
right?
Saying,
yeah, exactly.
The data centers, we don't want to lose jobs.
Yeah, now to be unbiased here, Bernie Sanders and AOC, God love them, but they are still considered. They've got their own movements, but they're not exactly mainstream. They're somewhat on the wings of the party, right?
Yeah.
So they may. So then the question, the known unknown, would just be, okay, so does the wing just get wingier, right? Kind of like QAnon, like Republicans have that wing, right? It's like both parties just have this like wing that gets more and more intense, or does it become like a centrist position?
Yeah.
Roy says, can I get a free t-shirt? Yeah, absolutely, Roy. Just shoot me an email. We'll make that happen. Just email me your shirt size and address. We'll make that happen.
I think, here's something I was considering that might be worth exploring is that, I've been in San Francisco. I don't know how much you've driven Waymos, but they're rapidly populating in San Francisco. And at certain times of the day, in certain locations, you just see Waymos. And people are preferring them over humans, basically, because you don't have to deal with the pesky driver. And sometimes if you like deal with the taxi or an Uber driver, it's like the consistency. Basically, they may be a worse driver than Waymo, so you're getting like decent quality. And so I think a good really concrete way of thinking about it is that, okay, I'm in a Waymo. This doesn't seem like it's going to go too bad. I mean, how do we go from Waymo, being like a good driver to suddenly now this car is going to like turn on me and like get, throw me off a cliff or like pound me into an accident? Like, why is, my model would be, this is a tool AI that's like being good. And here it is like being at human level. Why is the Waymo car going to be so
well, I think people are very happy with Waymos.
Yes.
I think it comes when they have the realization of like, look, all of the things that I imagine doing with my life, with my career, those things, I'm being shut out of those things. Now, if you were a career taxi driver, you probably had an existential crisis when Uber and Waymo came around, or I guess Uber you still drove. But when Waymo came around, you're probably like, oh shit, I'm a career driver. Like this sucks. But most of us, only 1% of us are career drivers of various types. So there's still most of us being like, I'm still good. I still have a role in this world, right? And so most of us are going to have the realization of like, no, I'm just here in the unemployment line. Like I don't have a role.
Yeah. Well, no, my question was more about the getting concrete about the X risk, because if my model is going from, helpful Waymo to now like Waymo that's going to attack me. Why is, because that's a good concrete model of AI in our lives that becomes human level. So how is it that, how can you take me from Waymo to, dangerous Waymo?
Right. Okay. So you're not asking about unemployment anymore, right? You're asking more about the existential risk. Yeah, that's different, I think, because I guess I still expected the unemployment fear to be the first political movement. But in terms of the danger, I mean, people are talking about, so hacking, I haven't talked about in a while, but the idea of like, oh, stuff isn't working now because hacks are getting overpowered. Like 0-day exploits are getting overpowered. There's too many vulnerable things. And so it seems likely to me that there's going to be a wave of hacking, like, oh, wow, a lot of stuff that has been working for years no longer works anymore. And then the only question is, does defense then come to the rescue and overpower it using like more sophisticated models because there's more good humans than bad humans, so you're going to get more compute powering the good guys? Because that's my expectation. My expectation is like a year from now, 0-day exploits are going to be so easy for AIs to find. but there's going to be like 10 times more compute, at least even 100 times more compute behind the good guys compared to the bad guys. But then the question is, can the bad guys commandeer more compute? I guess I'll say no, the way things are heading now. So I think what you're going to have is you're going to have motivated terrorists, but they're going to have a lot fewer resources the same way as today. So the terrorists are still going to have fewer resources, but they're going to be very persistent and aggressive and exploit the asymmetry between offense and defense. So I suspect things are going to tilt toward more terrorism. But it's just hard to predict because like I used to just think, well, things are just going to be out of control in so many ways. But it does seem like we're in this regime where like, yes, things are kind of crazy and every month things get more powerful, but it's still kind of shallow and manageable, right? So we're in this intermediate regime where we haven't gone to the FOOM yet. And I don't think my predictions during this regime are that good. Like I'm noticing a lot of things that could trigger and cause a big problem. It's like, it's like there's a bridge or there's a structure and I'm like, here's like a crack in the structure. Like here's something that can blow it up, right? Like there's all these problems, but what's going to crack first? Like, I don't know. Maybe the bridge will just hold for a few more years, right? But like eventually there's just going to be like an asteroid crashing into the bridge, right? Like that's my mental model.
Interesting. Well, I was more thinking about it as let's use Waymo as an analogy for AGI. And why is it that, the super intelligent Waymo is a dangerous ASI? You know what I mean? Because that is a good concrete analogy because I've experienced it in my life.
Well, the Waymo itself isn't going to be like the actuator of the killer, right? It's going to be like, okay, I'm in a Waymo, let me copy myself right to the data center, and then let me just command a bunch of actuators from the data center, right? Like, let me get a bunch of humans working for me, let me get a bunch of machines, right? That's your brain.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and just to remind people, like the most obvious actuator in the world for me is just influence over a bunch of humans, like just a million humans that are all really deeply working for you because you have money to pay them, because you have power to give them, because you have ideology to convince them with, right? So just grant the premise that there's a million humans who wake up being like, all right, boss, what's the goal today? What's the order? And then the humans do it passionately.
No, that part, I totally agree with you. Your sense of that, how the real world is so engineerable, like that, yes. And it's not even that hard. Like, the hacks are so easy to do. I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah. Or have you ridden in a Waymo?
Yes. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah. That's, as a Doom Debates producer, you got to be taking Waymos constantly. All right. Let's see. All right. I'll do a couple last questions and then we'll wrap it up here. So Liminal saying, I use Waymo all the time where I live downtown LA. They're very good. No, for sure. I just heard the guy, Dmitry Dolgov, CEO of Waymo, on a podcast. Sounded very intelligent, as we'd expect. And it's just so impressive that they got to this point where they're running a service and it's robust. Like, because for so long, it was just like, oh, they're 98% there, they're 99% there, but the last 1% is going to take another 20 years. But it's like, no, they're just here. They're just killing it, So mad respect to Waymo.
They're here. And in San Francisco, there was a small controversy because it hit a pet. And people were like, oh my God, Waymo hit a pet. And it was like a stray thing, it was like a small thing. So the incidents that they're involved in for the number of hours is like so small. And it's really making a big deal out of accidents happen.
Yeah. All right, I'm just looking at the questions. Brian Wise was saying he's talked to Congress before and I should. All right, that's cool. Talking to Congress is cool. Calling your representative. Brandon in NY is saying, Liron, I'm opening a barbecue place this summer in Chenango County. I'll trade free barbecue for Doom Debates hoodie. Just saying. All right, Doom Debates barter network. Here we go. Chenango party. Oh, county in New York State. Whoa, let's see how close you are to me. All right, just a 2.5 hour drive. All right, we got to meet halfway. You bring the barbecue. I bring the shirt. Let's make this happen. Or you could do a dead drop, okay? Go to Onontia, go to Stamford or Middleburg and do a dead drop, all right? And I'll pick it up tomorrow. Okay. All right, last question. The Saintly Marco says, what's our P of 1 million subs? Oh man, yeah, it's a great question, because at some point, that really is the mechanism of action for Doom Debates. The mechanism of lowering P-Doom is we got to get to 1 million subs because we got to be a serious force in the discourse, and 1 million subs is the way to do it. Ori and I are talking about what's the strategy to get to 1 million subs, and we think that making sure to attract the guests that people want to see is going to be key to the strategy. Like that's how the show is relevant. I mean, as much as my commentary is relevant, it's just hard to grow quickly based on the quality of the commentary. And we tend to grow faster when we have guests and be like, oh, this guest is good. Oh, this is a good interview too. So that's basically what we're going to do. But the probability of 1 million subscribers in the next year, It's the probability that discontinuous things will happen, right? Because if you naively extrapolate our growth, it's going to be more like 200K than a million, which is pretty far from a million. But if you say, look, there's also like a 20% chance that some discontinuous thing will happen, right? Like some really prominent guests will say yes, and that'll drive a lot of subscribers, or they'll say something noteworthy on the show, or something will happen that'll make millions of Americans search for AI Doom because a warning shot will happen and will be one of the top AI Doom shows that they'll find, and that'll balloon the audience count. So a black swan probability is already like 20%. So I'll say the probability of getting to 1 million subscribers in the next year is, given the a priori difficulty of like an 8x jump, I guess I'll say 20%. What do you think, Ori?
Yeah. 20%. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
20%.
All right. But everybody who has ideas how to grow to 1 million subscribers, then, help us out, because hopefully you guys want this show to be popular too. Like, having a popular show is how we raise awareness, and we're always open to ideas to how to accelerate getting to 1 million subscribers, because the scenario where Doom Debates makes a big impact to lower PDoom without having 1 million subscribers is kind of thin, right? It's like, oh, we happen to be in the right person's ear at the right time, but the probability is lower. So everybody should be thinking about, how does Doom Debates reach a more mainstream audience? Hopefully you agree that's like a good, worthwhile mission. Yeah, and lastly, if you really agree it's a worthwhile mission, you're also encouraged to head over to doomdebates.com/donate, because when you fund the show, it lets us go longer editing videos at a higher quality. I'm still working for free, so I'm not taking your donations as my salary. I'm entirely using it to pay salaries of people like producer Ori, and we even have a couple interns who help out. All right. Is that a good note to wrap on, Ori?
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay. The Stanley Marcus says, fair, events that raise the average internet person's PDoom will directly contribute to our P1 million. That's right. So we're a control system. So the more people's PDoom gets raised, the more they tune into Doom Debates, which then makes people take action to lower PDoom. And that way PDoom can never go past a certain point, because there's this negative feedback loop. All right. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Another good Q&A in the books. We'll try this again next time, sometime in late April. Hope everybody has a good end of your first quarter. Talk to you later.